So I actually just did a critical incident debrief about a week and a half ago on a really tough call. So when you have situations like that, I mean, you're definitely feeling it. I know that's something. I also work at the crisis stabilization unit, and we're super busy right now. So I can't really say that it's particular the officers versus my other job
Mhm.
that has the most impact right now. But there's definitely that. I mean, just hearing about the stuff that they do or the stuff that they see, um, it absolutely has an impact on me. It's changed my viewpoint. It's changed my interactions on how I do different things, and it's changed. I mean, I work in crisis, and it's without a doubt changed like how I proceed with different safety um, plans and requirements and things like that. So it's had an effect, but it's again like knowing what you need for supports, what you need to help with that. The officers will know, like anytime that I've talked to them about it, like I will never like flat out tell an officer like, hey, you need to start seeing a therapist. So it's always starting out with, you need to talk to somebody, you need to do something. So clearly like we're not doing well right now, and a lot of times that's including myself in it too. So like, what are we doing? um, and at least getting, kind of like the baby steps into place, because I'm not a therapist for the officers without a doubt. But we all have a pretty good rapport and relationship. So I think it helps too with just the idea of, even after really bad calls, we're talking about them together. I remember there's a call I had, I think like last summer, that really got to me. Um, the person was really, really mad directly at me because I put an involuntary hold. And it was one of those ones that, I got off work at 10, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm still awake thinking about it. And I also remember this to this day, I had two officers that were also on that call that texted me that night because they were working late and were checking in to see how I was doing because they knew that I was going to think about it and
Wow.
that I wasn't going to get it out of my head. Um, so just for that, I mean, like I'm the person that's there randomly. I'm not even a police officer, and they're offering that support to other people.
Okay.
Um,
I can relate a story when and it still bothers me to this day. I probably need to talk to somebody about it. I responded to a call on Union Street. It's a, it was a 8-year-old African American boy that was laying on the floor on a mattress on the floor in a house that the carpet had been pulled up. Um, he had come to find out that his grandmother was watching him because his mom was in prison. Okay, so I see this kid. His eyes are blue, and he's dead from further investigation revealed that he had a broken leg. It was never mended to properly. But when I went outside, because I'm the first officer on the scene, I'm going. We get other people to show up, and I'm canvassing the area. And you wouldn't believe the additional trauma that I got from the neighbors down. That bugged me for a long time.
I hear a lot of times, some police officers are reluctant to sort of show that vulnerability, show that weakness. They're afraid they'll be judged for it. How do you get by that in the in Riley County Police Department?
That culture is changing as we are doing these debriefs and as we are seeing the benefits of there's something magical sometimes just about speaking about things, about telling the story and telling others how it affected you. If you do that one time and you realize how helpful it is and how it unburdens you in some way, it just changes your perspective on it. I think the old culture was that you kept that stuff in deep and buried it, and you don't talk about it, and you don't show weakness, and you don't show that anything's getting to you, and that's that RoboCop mentality that maybe was around years ago. But the other part of trying to see that recognize that everyone is capable, that we're all human beings, is recognizing in yourself that you're a human being as well, and that you're capable of bad times trying to have to deal with stuff like that. The other thing that the department's done, frankly, is they've made it so that they've streamlined and made it easier to reach out and get help, and do it in an anonymous way. If that is a hurdle that you're concerned about, I can tell you that our numbers show, the supervisors see, and I'll see reports on it sometimes, how it shows not what officers are using those services, but it will show us numbers for our agency. Mm-hmm. And those numbers have gone up in the last several years dramatically. And it was a program that when it first came, hardly anyone was using it. And we've seen a steady increase. And I attribute that to the fact that our culture is changing and seeing the effects of the debriefs and getting some help and having programs like the co-responder program and having, people like Bryn who we can trust and see the things that they're able to do helps change that for our department. And that's a huge thing. I think over the years we've learned that, there's a saying for police officers. There's some books that have been written and stuff, and some of the training that we've occurred. They call it the Eustas. I used to do this before I was a police officer. You can just fill in the blank. I used to fish, or used to golf, or I used to whatever. And so we've come to realize that you can't be a police officer 24/7. You can't on your days off be just constantly thinking and going to the store and looking around the corner and wondering who you're going to encounter and stuff like that. And one of the big things is, and we try to encourage this as much as we can. And I think we're doing a better job especially with our younger guys to recognize that you should have friends that are outside of law enforcement. If you used to have friends who were outside of law enforcement before you were in law enforcement, you should still have, those interactions with them. And I think the crutch that we used to use was that my phone's starting to go dead here. Sorry.
We're just going to go about 5 more minutes or so. Okay.
I think that, we used to say that they can't understand, what we go through and that sort of thing. And that's baloney. I mean, you need to have friends that are outside of this, and it helps give you perspective. And, the humor you were talking about, that's interesting. And Kevin can definitely attest to that's a very real thing. And Bryn would tell you that's a very real thing. Cop humor, but I understand this. Would never be acceptable for anything that in regards to cultural groups or anything like that. That would never be acceptable. But it is something sometimes when you're dealing with extreme trauma and as a coping mechanism. And honestly, it's a poor coping mechanism, but it's been around for a long time.